A billionaire, owner of a restaurant, finds four children abandoned in the snow on the sidewalk in front of his establishment. As he approaches them, he discovers something that leaves him speechless. The wind howled through the empty streets, carrying snowflakes that swirled madly under the streetlights. Storefronts, once bright, were now dark and silent. In the heart of the city, only one facade remained lit, Le Coeur, a restaurant that exuded elegance even in the midst of the storm. Inside, Etienne Dubois walked through the empty dining hall, his footsteps echoing in the silence. His fingertips brushed lightly over the crisp white linens as he passed each table. The golden light from the chandeliers reflected on his wedding ring, a constant reminder of his loneliness. "Mr. Dubois?" Pierre, the maître d', interrupted his thoughts. "Everything is ready to close." Etienne nodded, his gaze drifting toward the foggy window. "Thank you, Pierre. You can go. I'll lock up." Alone once more, Etienne headed to the spotless kitchen. The lingering aroma of truffles and foie gras still hung in the air, remnants of the evening's tasting menu. His eyes fell upon a framed photograph on the wall, he and his team, all smiles, holding the newly earned third Michelin star. A bitter smile touched his lips. Success, fame, wealth, everything he had ever dreamed of. Then why did he feel so empty? The distant sound of a child's cry cut through the silence, so faint that Etienne thought it might be his imagination. Frowning, he moved closer to the back window. The crying came again, louder this time. Intrigued, Etienne unlocked the back door. Immediately hit by a blast of icy wind, he blinked, his eyes adjusting to the darkness. That was when he saw them. Four small figures huddled against the wall, partially covered by the accumulating snow. Etienne's heart pounded. Children, abandoned in the storm. Without hesitation, he ran toward them. As he approached, details became clearer. A girl of about 4 clung protectively to a younger boy. At their feet, 2 identical babies trembled violently, their lips taking on a concerning shade of blue. "My God," Etienne murmured, kneeling in the snow. "Are you all right?" "What happened?" The older girl looked up, her wide eyes filled with fear. She didn't answer, only tightened her hold on the boy beside her. Etienne removed his coat, wrapping it around the twins. "Let's get inside. It's too cold out here." He held out his hand to the girl, who hesitated for a moment before taking it. Leading the children into the restaurant, Etienne felt a mix of emotions, shock, concern, and a growing anger toward whoever had abandoned these little ones. In the warm kitchen, he quickly fashioned a makeshift nest of clean towels for the twins. The younger boy, still silent, clung to Etienne's leg, his wide eyes tracking every movement. "What are your names?" Etienne asked gently as he prepared some hot chocolate. The older girl, still wary, answered in a whisper, "I'm Emma. This is Lucas." She pointed to the boy attached to Etienne's leg. "The babies are Leia and Louis." Etienne nodded, handing Emma a mug of hot chocolate. That was when he noticed something. Hanging around the girl's neck, partly hidden by her worn sweater, was a pendant. The world seemed to freeze. Etienne recognized that pendant. He knew every detail of its silver surface, every tiny scratch. It was identical to the one he had given his sister, Amélie, 15 years ago, on the night she disappeared. With trembling hands, Etienne knelt in front of Emma. "Emma, that pendant, where did you get it?" The girl instinctively clutched the necklace, her eyes narrowing with distrust. "It's my mom's," she whispered. Etienne's heart thundered in his chest. His mind raced, trying to process what this could mean. Could it be? After all these years, a sharp cry from one of the twins broke the moment. Etienne stood abruptly, torn between wanting to ask more questions and the urgent need to care for the children. "All right," he said, more to himself than to Emma. "Let's take care of you all first. Then we'll talk more." Moving around the kitchen, preparing food and searching for dry clothes, Etienne couldn't stop glancing at the pendant. Each time the metal glinted under the light, a wave of memories flooded him. Amélie laughing, Amélie crying, Amélie slipping away into the night without a trace. The children ate quietly, their eyes following Etienne's every movement with a mix of fear and curiosity. Emma, in particular, seemed perpetually on guard, as though she expected everything to be taken away at any moment. When the twins finally fell asleep, wrapped in soft towels, and Lucas dozed off beside Emma, Etienne allowed himself a moment to reflect. Looking at the four small figures, so vulnerable yet so resilient, Etienne felt something stir within him. A purpose, a connection he hadn't felt in a long time. Emma watched him closely, her fingers absent-mindedly playing with the pendant. At that moment, Etienne made a decision. He didn't know how, but he was going to protect these children, and perhaps in the process, unravel the mystery that had haunted him for a decade and a half. Outside, the snowfall continued relentlessly, but inside Le Coeur, a spark of hope had been lit. A new journey was about to begin, one that would change Etienne Dubois' life forever. The private elevator hummed quietly as it rose to the top floor. Etienne cradled Louis in his arms, the little one finally asleep after hours of intermittent crying. Emma, gripping Lucas's hand, gazed warily at the mirrors surrounding them, reflecting their tired images infinitely. Leia, nestled against Etienne's chest, whimpered softly. The doors slid open silently, revealing an apartment that looked like it belonged in a design magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the snow-covered city, the lights twinkling like distant stars. "Welcome," Etienne murmured, more to himself than to the children. The sound of his voice echoed in the empty space, highlighting how little he actually lived there. Emma was the first to step inside, her wide eyes sweeping over every detail. Her hands, still firmly holding Lucas, were scratched and dirty. Etienne noticed, with a pang, that her shoes were nearly falling apart. "You must be hungry," he said, guiding them to the kitchen. "I'll fix something to eat." While Etienne moved around the ultra-modern kitchen, the children stayed close together, like a small, frightened cluster. Emma, clearly the protector, kept the others near her. "Emma," Etienne called softly, setting a plate of sandwiches on the table. "Can you tell me what happened? Where are your parents?" The girl's face closed off immediately. She grabbed a sandwich, broke it into smaller pieces for the twins, and answered without looking at Etienne. "I can't talk about that." Etienne sighed, frustrated but understanding the need for patience. "All right, but you're safe here, I promise." The following hours were a blur of improvised baths, borrowed clothes, Etienne's t-shirts looking like dresses on the children, and arrangements for them to sleep in the vast living room. When the four finally dozed off, huddled together in a nest of cashmere blankets, Etienne collapsed onto the sofa, exhausted. His gaze drifted to the pendant around Emma's neck, shining softly in the moonlight that streamed through the windows. 15 years of unanswered questions seemed even heavier tonight. The soft buzz of his phone pulled him from his thoughts. It was Sarah, his executive chef. "Etienne, is everything all right?" "You're never late." He looked at the clock, surprised to see it was already past 9 a.m. "Sarah, I need a favor. Can you come to my apartment? And bring some children's clothes if you can." Half an hour later, the elevator chimed Sarah's arrival. Her eyes widened at the sight of the children sleeping in the living room. "Etienne, what?" He pulled her into the kitchen, explaining in a hushed voice the events of the previous night. Sarah listened intently, her eyes filled with concern and compassion. "My God, those poor kids," she murmured, glancing at them. "What will you do?" Etienne ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration. "I don't know. But that pendant—" "Sarah, it's identical to Amélie's. It can't be a coincidence." Sarah placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "We'll figure it out. First, let's take care of them." With Sarah's help, the next few hours were more organized. The children woke up to find clean clothes and a breakfast worthy of a Michelin-starred restaurant. Emma, still cautious, began to relax slightly under Sarah's gentle presence. While Sarah entertained the children, Etienne withdrew to his office. With trembling hands, he dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "Mark, it's Etienne Dubois. I need your services again." Mark, a private detective who had helped with the search for Amélie years before, listened carefully as Etienne explained the situation. "Interesting," Mark murmured. "I'll start investigating right away. But Etienne, you need to be prepared. This could open old wounds." "I know," Etienne responded, his gaze drifting to where the children were. "But I need to know the truth." Returning to the living room, Etienne found a scene that squeezed his heart. Lucas, the timid boy, was perched on Sarah's lap, laughing as she tickled his belly. The twins were playing with colorful blocks on the carpet. And Emma watched from an armchair, the pendant between her fingers. "Etienne," Sarah called softly, her tone serious. "So we need to talk about the next step. These children need medical care, and legally—" He raised his hand to stop her. "I know, but I can't just hand them over to the system. Not until I understand what's going on." Sarah nodded sympathetically. "Then let's do this right. I know a discreet pediatrician who can come here. And maybe it's time to call Juliet." Etienne grimaced at the thought of his lawyer, but he knew Sarah was right. They needed professional help. While Sarah made the necessary calls, Etienne approached Emma. The girl watched him, her eyes a mix of fear and curiosity. "Emma," he began gently, kneeling beside her, "I know you're protecting your siblings. You're very brave. But I'm here to help, truly. You can trust me." For a moment, she seemed like she might speak. Her lips parted, tears filled her eyes. But then, as if a curtain closed, her expression hardened again. "I can't," she whispered. "I promised." Etienne nodded, respecting her decision but feeling the weight of the mystery grow. As he rose, his gaze fell again on the pendant. A sudden memory struck him, Amélie smiling as he gave her the birthday gift on her 18th birthday. "One day," he promised silently, both to Emma and to the memory of his sister, "we'll find out the truth." Outside, the snow was starting to melt, the first rays of sun peeking through the clouds. A new reality was dawning for Etienne Dubois, one that promised challenges, mysteries, and perhaps the chance to fill the void that had consumed him for so long. Mark's office smelled of worn leather and strong coffee. The detective, his keen eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses, examined the few pieces of information Etienne had gathered about the children. "So," Mark said, leaning back in his chair, "4 abandoned children, a pendant identical to your missing sisters, and no solid clues about the parents." He paused, drumming his fingers on the desk. "It's an intriguing start, Etienne." Etienne nodded, feeling the weight of the situation. "I need to know if there's a connection to Amélie, Mark. There's something about these children, especially Emma." Mark leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with professional interest. "Tell me more about Emma. Did she say anything at all, that might give us a lead?" Etienne closed his eyes, recalling the last few days. "She's extremely protective of her siblings. She rarely talks about the past, but—" He paused, remembering a specific moment. "Last night, while I was reading them a bedtime story, she mentioned her mother used to sing them to sleep, a lullaby in French." Mark jotted down some notes. "That might help. Anything else?" "The pendant," Etienne continued. "She clings to it when she's nervous, like a talisman. And once, when she thought no one was listening, I heard her whisper, 'Mommy will come back.'" The detective nodded, absorbing the information. "All right. I'll start checking orphanages, shelters, and any reports of missing children that match their descriptions. I'll also reopen Amélie's file to see if there's any connection we might have missed." Leaving Mark's office, Etienne felt a mixture of hope and apprehension. The search was officially underway, but where would it lead? Back at the apartment, Etienne found Sarah playing with the twins on the living room rug. She looked up when he entered, her smile fading at his expression. "How did it go with Mark?" she asked gently, standing up. Etienne sighed, running a hand through his hair. "He'll investigate, but it's like searching for a needle in a haystack, Sarah." She placed a comforting hand on his arm. "We'll find answers, Etienne, together." At that moment, Emma entered the room, holding a book. Her eyes, ever watchful, flicked between Etienne and Sarah. "Can I read to Leia and Louis?" she asked shyly. "Of course, sweetheart," Sarah replied with a warm smile. As Emma settled down with the twins, Etienne watched her closely. There was something in her profile, the way she tilted her head, that stirred a wave of memories. Flashback Amélie, At 18, sitting at the kitchen table, leaning over a book, her brown hair falling like a curtain around her face, the newly gifted pendant gleaming at her neck. "What are you reading so intently, little sis?" Etienne asked, ruffling his sister's hair. Amélie looked up, a mysterious smile on her lips. "Just dreaming about the future, Etty. There's a whole world out there waiting for me." Etienne laughed. "Well, don't go yet. Who's going to help me run the restaurant?" Amélie's smile faded slightly, something flickering in her eyes that Etienne couldn't decipher. "Don't worry, brother. I'll always be around." End of flashback. "Etienne? Etienne." Sarah's voice brought him back to the present. She was looking at him with concern. "Are you all right? You seemed miles away." He shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. "Sorry, I was just remembering Amélie." Sarah nodded with understanding. Her gaze drifted to Emma, who was still reading to the twins. "You know," she said slowly, "there's something about Emma that reminds me of the photos of Amélie you showed me." Etienne felt his heart speed up. "You noticed too?" Sarah nodded. "It's subtle, but it's there. The way she tilts her head, the way her eyes light up when she smiles." She hesitated. "Etienne, do you think maybe—" He knew exactly what Sarah was suggesting, but the idea was almost too painful to consider. If Emma really was Amélie's daughter, where had his sister been all these years? Why had she never reached out? Before he could reply, Etienne's phone buzzed. It was a message from Mark. "I found something. A woman matching Amélie's description was seen at a shelter 3 months ago. She had 4 children with her. I need more details about the pendant." Etienne felt the world spin. It was the first concrete lead in years. "Sarah," he said, his voice trembling with emotion, "I need you to stay with the kids for a few hours." "I have to meet Mark," she nodded, seeing the urgency in his eyes. "Go. I'll look after them." As Etienne prepared to leave, Emma approached him, still holding the book. "You're leaving?" she asked, her voice small and scared. Etienne knelt to meet her eyes. "Just for a few hours, Emma. I promise I'll be back." She studied him for a moment and then, to his surprise, gave him a quick hug. "Okay," she whispered. "Mommy said she'd come back too." Etienne's heart twisted at her words. As he stood, his eyes met Sarah's, who had also heard. The determination in her gaze matched his own. In the elevator, descending to face whatever Mark had discovered, Etienne made a silent promise. He would find answers, not just for himself or for Amélie, but for Emma, Lucas, Leia, and Louis. These children deserved the truth, and he would do whatever it took to give it to them. As the elevator doors opened onto the busy street, Etienne felt a mix of fear and hope. Each step took him closer to the truth, but also closer to a past that could change everything. With one last look at the building where the children waited, he set off, determined to solve the mystery that had begun on that snowy night. The sound of children's laughter echoed through what had once been Etienne's quiet apartment. He paused at the living room entrance, a cup of coffee in hand, watching the scene before him. Lucas, sitting on the floor, was drawing with intense concentration, while twins Leia and Louis played with colorful blocks. Emma, ever watchful, oversaw everything from her seat on the couch. Etienne smiled, amazed at how quickly his life had changed. Only 2 weeks ago, this space was cold and empty, just a place to sleep between long hours at the restaurant. Now it was full of life. "Mr. Etienne," Lucas called, holding up his drawing proudly. "Look what I made." Etienne approached, kneeling beside the boy. The drawing showed a big house with a lush garden. In the center, 5 stick figures, 4 small, 1 tall, were all smiling. "It's beautiful, Lucas," Etienne praised, feeling a lump in his throat. "Who are these people?" Lucas pointed to each figure. "That's you, that's Emma, me, Leia, and Louis." He paused, his finger hovering over a 6th figure, half erased in the corner of the page. "And that's Mommy." Etienne cast a quick glance at Emma, who was watching closely. She looked away quickly, her hands instinctively going to the pendant around her neck. Etienne's phone vibrated, breaking the moment. It was a message from Sarah. "On my way with groceries, ready for our perfect routine mission." He smiled, grateful for Sarah's help. In the past few days, she had become indispensable, not just managing the restaurant but helping care for the children. "Kids," Etienne announced, "Aunt Sarah is coming. Let's get everything ready to welcome her, okay?" At the mention of Sarah, smiles spread across the children's faces. Even Emma, normally reserved, seemed to brighten. As he helped Lucas put away the pencils, Etienne reflected on how his routine had changed. Long nights at the restaurant had been replaced by family dinners and bedtime reading. Mornings, once devoted to reviewing menus, were now filled with noisy, chaotic breakfasts. The elevator's chime signaled Sarah's arrival. She walked in, laden with shopping bags. "Reinforcements have arrived," she declared cheerfully. The children ran to help her, even the twins waddling in her direction. Sarah turned to Etienne, her eyes shining with determination. "All right, chef. Today, we establish a schedule that would make any daycare proud." The following hours were spent setting up a routine that balanced playtime, learning, and rest. Emma observed everything with interest, occasionally offering shy suggestions that surprised the adults with her perceptiveness. "She's incredibly mature for her age," Sarah remarked quietly to Etienne as they prepared lunch. Etienne nodded, glancing into the living room where Emma was helping the twins with a puzzle. "Sometimes I wonder what she's been through." The rest of the afternoon was devoted to implementing the new schedule. To Etienne's relief, the children responded well to the structure. Even the usually fussy twins seemed calmer. While Sarah read a story to Lucas and the twins before nap time, Etienne found Emma alone on the balcony, looking out over the city. "Are you all right, sweetie?" he asked softly, using a gentle term of endearment. Emma turned, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, Etienne saw a vulnerability she rarely showed. "Mr. Etienne," she began hesitantly, Are we going to stay here? Forever?" The question took Etienne by surprise. He knelt beside her, choosing his words carefully. "Emma, I promise I'll do everything I can to keep you safe and happy. I can't promise forever, but I promise I'll be here as long as you need me." Emma nodded slowly, her fingers playing with the pendant. "Mommy said something like that once." Before Etienne could reply, his phone rang. It was Mark. "Etienne, I have news." The detective's voice sounded urgent. "I've spent the last few days tracking Amelie's history. It's complicated, but I've found a pattern. She used at least 3 different names in recent years." Etienne felt his heart race. "Fake names? Why?" "I don't know yet," Mark replied. "But the latest name I found, Etienne, it was used to register the birth of a girl 4 years ago. The child's name is Emma." The world seemed to spin around Etienne. He looked at Emma, still fiddling with the pendant, oblivious to the conversation that might change everything. "Mark," Etienne said, his voice barely above a whisper, "we need to be sure. These kids, they might be..." "Amélie's children," Mark finished. "Yes, I'm thinking the same thing." "Etienne, this is huge. If it's true, it means your sister's been hiding for some reason. We need to be careful." After hanging up, Etienne stood there, his mind a storm of emotions and questions. Emma watched him curiously. "Are you okay, Mr. Etienne?" He forced a smile. "Yes, sweetie. Just thinking." At that moment, Sarah appeared in the balcony doorway. "The little ones are asleep," she announced, but stopped upon seeing Etienne's expression. "What happened?" Etienne cast a meaningful glance at Emma. "Why don't you rest a bit, Emma? I'm sure Lucas would love some company." As soon as Emma left, Etienne shared Mark's findings with Sarah. She listened carefully, her eyes widening at the implications. "Oh, Etienne," she whispered, placing a hand on his arm, "this changes everything." He nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility. "Sarah, if these children really are Amélie's, my nieces and nephews, I need to protect them. I need to find out what happened to my sister." Sarah hugged him, offering silent comfort. When she pulled away, determination shone in her eyes. "We'll find out together, Etienne. These kids are already part of our family, no matter what we discover." From the other room, the soft sound of Emma humming reached them. It was the same melody Amélie used to sing when they were children. Etienne and Sarah exchanged a look of understanding. The journey to the truth was just beginning, but one thing was certain: their lives would never be the same. With the children sleeping peacefully and the sun setting over the city, Etienne felt, for the first time in years, that he was exactly where he should be. Etienne's office, once a sanctuary of meticulous work, was now an organized chaos of papers, photos, and maps. At the center of it all, a framed photo of Amélie smiled back, as though keeping all the secrets they were trying to uncover. Etienne ran his fingers through his hair, frustrated, as he examined the latest documents Marc had sent. Sarah, seated beside him, frowned in concentration. "Look here," she said, pointing to a document. "Check this out, Etienne. A marriage record." He leaned over, his eyes scanning the paper. "Amélie Dubois, married to Jean-Pierre Mercier." His voice trembled slightly. 5 years ago. Sarah gently squeezed his shoulder. "That might explain why she vanished. She started a new life." Etienne shook his head, confused. "But why not tell me? Why all this secrecy?" Before Sarah could respond, a burst of childish laughter echoed through the apartment, followed by more giggles. Both smiled, the tension momentarily easing. "Sounds like painting time is going well," Sarah commented. Etienne nodded, grateful for the distraction. In the past few weeks, the children had blossomed. Lucas, once so shy, now chattered happily about his drawings. The twins, Leia and Louis, were stronger and more active. And Emma, well, Emma still kept her secrets, but Etienne saw small signs that she was opening up. "Let's take a peek," he suggested, standing up. "So we could use a break." In the living room, which had been turned into an impromptu art studio, they found a riot of color and laughter. Lucas, covered in blue paint, proudly showed his painting to Emma. The twins, perched in high chairs, clapped their hands covered in red and yellow. "Mr. Etienne, Aunt Sarah," Lucas exclaimed. "Look at what I made." Etienne approached, inspecting the painting. It was an abstract representation, but he could make out shapes that looked like people. "It's wonderful, Lucas. Who are they?" Lucas pointed to each figure. "That's you. That's Aunt Sarah. That's all of us." He hesitated, then indicated a figure tucked in the corner. "And that's Mommy." Etienne and Sarah exchanged a quick glance. Emma, who had been cleaning the twins' hands, paused, listening. "Lucas," Sarah asked gently, "do you remember the house where you lived with your mom?" The boy frowned in thought. It was big, had a garden. There were purple flowers. "Lavender," Emma interjected softly. Everyone turned to look at her. She blushed slightly but continued. "Mom loved lavender, said it reminded her of home." Etienne felt his heart jump. Amélie had always had a thing for lavender, ever since she was a child. "Emma," he asked carefully, "do you remember anything else about the house?" She hesitated, her fingers instinctively going to the pendant. "There was a white fence and a blue mailbox." Sarah grabbed a notepad, jotting everything down. In recent days, she had become an expert at piecing together the small clues the children revealed. "Etienne," she murmured, "this might give us a location." He nodded, fighting down his excitement. Turning to the kids, he forced a casual smile. "How about a snack? I think we have ice cream in the freezer." As the children cheered about the treat, Etienne and Sarah rushed back to the office. Sarah immediately started researching on her tablet. "Houses with white fences, lavender gardens, a blue mailbox," she muttered, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Meanwhile, Etienne called Marc. "Marc, I need you to look something up. Properties registered under the name Jean-Pierre Mercier or Amélie Mercier in the last 5 years. As they waited for Marc's response, Etienne couldn't sit still. He paced back and forth, his mind awhirl with emotions. On one hand, each new piece of information brought him closer to Amélie. On the other, each revelation posed more questions than answers. Why did she marry in secret? Why use fake names? And most importantly, where is she now, he murmured, more to himself than to Sarah. Sarah glanced up from her search, her expression gentle. Whatever her reasons, I'm sure Amélie believed she was doing the right thing. She loved you. That much is obvious from how the kids talk about her. Before Etienne could answer, his phone rang. Marc again. "Etienne, I found something. A property purchased 4 years ago by Jean-Pierre Mercier. It's about 2 hours from the city. And guess what? It has a white fence and a big garden. Etienne's heart leaped. Give me the address, Mark. I need it now. As Mark rattled off the details, Sarah rushed into the office, eyes shining with excitement. Etienne, I think I found it. A house matching the kid's description. It's in 27 Lilac Road, Etienne finished, reading off the paper where he'd written Mark's info. They exchanged looks, realization hitting them simultaneously. They were one step closer. What now? Sarah asked, voice trembling with emotion. Etienne took a deep breath, trying to organize his thoughts. We need to go there. See it for ourselves. But the kids... I'll stay with them, came a voice from the doorway. It was Emma, her big, serious eyes watching them. You're going to look for Mommy, aren't you? Etienne knelt down in front of her, once again surprised by her perceptiveness. Emma, She cut him off, her voice trembling slightly. It's okay. Just bring her back, okay? Etienne hugged her, feeling her small body shake in his arms. I promise, sweetheart. We'll do our best. In the next few minutes, Etienne and Sarah made preparations for their trip. They explained the situation to Lucas and reassured the twins. Emma, surprisingly, took on the role of caretaker, promising to keep everyone safe and well-behaved. As they headed to the elevator, Etienne felt the weight of another pendant in his pocket. He had kept it for years, an identical twin to the one Emma wore. Now it felt like he might finally return it to its rightful owner. In the car, on the way to the mysterious house, Etienne and Sarah remained silent, each lost in thought. The urban skyline gradually gave way to green fields, and Etienne felt a mix of anxiety and hope growing in his chest. After nearly 2 hours of driving, they turned onto a dirt road. In the distance, a white house with a blue roof came into view, and there it was, the white fence, the lavender garden, the blue mailbox. Etienne parked, his hands trembling slightly on the steering wheel. Sarah placed a reassuring hand on his arm. We're in this together, she said softly. He nodded, grateful for her presence. Together, they got out of the car and approached the house. The scent of lavender filled the air, stirring a rush of memories for Etienne. At the front door, Etienne hesitated. So many years of searching, so many questions. He raised his hand and knocked. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, footsteps. The doorknob turned. The door opened. Standing there was a woman Etienne knew better than himself. Yet at the same time, she felt like a stranger. Amélie, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Her eyes widened in shock and recognition. Etienne? How? But before either could say more, a shout came from inside the house. Mum, who is it? Etienne and Sarah exchanged a look of surprise. It seemed the revelations were far from over. Etienne's office was engulfed in an uneasy twilight, lit only by the bluish glow of his laptop. Outside, the city slept, but within those 4 walls, the search for answers continued relentlessly. The phone vibrated, shattering the silence. It was Mark. Etienne, came the detective's tired but excited voice. I found something. Amélie's last known job. She worked at a small bookstore downtown about 6 months ago. Etienne's heart quickened. 6 months? That recent? Yes, Mark confirmed. She was using the name Anne Moreau. She worked there for almost a year before vanishing again. The gears in Etienne's mind turned. Had his sister really been so close all this time? Why hadn't she come to him? Thank you, Mark. I'll check it out personally tomorrow. Hanging up, Etienne leaned back in his chair, absorbing the information. His eyes wandered to the photo of Amélie on his desk. Her smile seemed to hide the secrets he was only just beginning to uncover. A soft sound at the door drew his attention. It was Emma, standing at the threshold, her large, curious eyes fixed on him in the darkness. Emma, what are you doing up so late? Etienne asked gently, turning on a light. The girl hesitated before stepping into the office. I can't sleep, she murmured. Her fingers toyed nervously with the pendant around her neck. Etienne studied her carefully. Over the past few days, He'd noticed a change in Emma. It was as though she were fighting an internal battle, wanting to speak, yet held back by something. "Do you want to talk?" he offered kindly. To his surprise, Emma nodded. She came closer and climbed onto Etienne's lap as she did when she was particularly anxious. "Mr. Etienne," she began, her voice barely a whisper, I had a dream about the night we left." Etienne's heart tightened. It was the first time Emma had ever voluntarily brought up the family's flight. "Will you tell me about it, sweetie?" he asked softly. Emma took a deep breath as though gathering courage. "It was the middle of the night. Mom woke us up. She was crying, but she tried to smile at us. She said we had to leave, that it was an adventure." Etienne listened intently, his arm around Emma protectively. "We only took a few clothes and Mom's pendant. She said it was very important, that it would keep us safe." Emma paused, tears filling her eyes. There was a man shouting outside. Mom looked so scared. "That man," Etienne asked carefully, "was he your dad?" Emma shook her head. "No. Daddy left a long time ago. This man, Mom called him the bad one." A chill ran down Etienne's spine. What exactly had Amélie been running from? Before he could ask more questions, his phone vibrated again. It was a message from Sarah. "Etienne, I found something. Come to the Sainte Marie shelter immediately. It's urgent." He looked at Emma, torn between the need to go and his desire to comfort her. "Emma, I need to go out for a bit. Will you be okay with the others?" She nodded, sliding off his lap. "You're going to look for Mom?" "I hope so, sweetie. I really hope so." 20 minutes later, Etienne parked in front of the Sainte Marie shelter. Sarah was waiting at the entrance, her face a mixture of excitement and worry. "What did you find?" he asked as soon as he reached her. Sarah pulled him inside, leading him down a dimly lit corridor. "One of the volunteers recognized the photo of Amélie I showed. She was here, Etienne. Only 2 weeks ago." Etienne's heart pounded. 2 weeks? So she's in the city? Sarah nodded, stopping in front of a small office. "There's more. The volunteer said Amélie looked scared, like she was running from someone. And she wasn't alone." "The kids?" Etienne asked, confused. "No," Sarah replied, opening the door. "See for yourself." Inside the room sat a middle-aged woman. Her eyes widened when she saw Etienne. "My goodness," she murmured. "You look so much like her." Etienne approached slowly. "You knew my sister, Amélie." The woman nodded. "She called herself Anne when she came here. She had a baby with her, no more than a few months old." Etienne felt the world tilt. Another baby. There was another child. "Please," he pleaded, "tell me everything you know." Over the next few minutes, the story emerged. Amélie had arrived late one night, carrying a newborn. She was visibly frightened and asked for help hiding. "She mentioned other kids," the woman went on. "Said she needed to protect them, that he couldn't find them." Etienne and Sarah exchanged looks. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, but the picture they formed was disturbing. Leaving the shelter, Etienne felt dizzy from all the revelations. Sarah guided him to a nearby bench. "Etienne," she said softly, "I think we know enough to act. Amélie is in danger, and now we know there's another baby involved." He nodded, his mind racing. "We have to find her, Sarah, and fast." Back at the apartment, Etienne found Emma awake, waiting for him. Her eyes searched his face, filled with hope and fear. "Did you find her?" she asked timidly. Etienne knelt in front of her, taking her small hands in his. "Not yet, sweetie, but we're close, very close." He hesitated before continuing. "Emma, I need to ask you something. It's about your mom." Emma looked at him expectantly. "Your mom, did she have another baby recently?" Emma's eyes widened in recognition. She nodded slowly. "Baby Gabriel. Mom said we had to keep him a secret, to protect him." Etienne felt a surge of emotions. Another nephew, another family member who needed protection. As he hugged Emma, Etienne made a silent vow. He would find Amélie. He would protect all the children. And above all, He would uncover the truth behind this whole mystery. Night wore on, but for Etienne, Sarah, and the children, a new journey was just beginning. A journey toward truth, reunion, and hopefully, the safety they all deserved. The shrill ring of the phone cut through the silence of the early morning. Etienne, who had barely slept, answered on the first ring. "Mr. Dubois," said an unfamiliar voice on the other end. "This is Saint-Antoine Hospital. We have a patient who listed you as her emergency contact. Amélie Mercier." Etienne's heart stopped for an instant. "Amélie, is she all right? What happened?" "Mrs. Mercier was admitted a few hours ago with severe exhaustion and dehydration. She's stable, but—" Etienne barely heard the rest. His mind whirled. After weeks of searching, Amélie had appeared in the most unexpected way. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said, hanging up quickly. With trembling hands, Etienne got dressed. His gaze fell on a photo of Amélie on his bedside table. So many questions, so many emotions, all about to come to a head. In the corridor, he found Sarah, who had been awakened by the call. "Is it her?" Sarah asked, her eyes full of concern. Etienne nodded. "She's at the hospital. I have to go." Sarah squeezed his hand. "Go, I'll take care of the kids. Keep me posted." With one last grateful look, Etienne left. The drive to the hospital felt like an eternity. Every red light was torture. Finally, he parked in a rush and sprinted to the reception desk. "Amélie Mercier," he panted at the receptionist. "I'm her brother." Minutes later, guided by a nurse, Etienne stopped in front of a closed door. His heart pounded so loudly he could hear it. Taking a deep breath, he entered. The room was simple, illuminated by the gentle morning light. There, lying in the bed, was Amélie. Her face was pale and etched with fatigue, but it was her, his lost sister. Amélie turned her head slowly, her eyes widening when she saw Etienne. "Eti?" Her voice was barely a whisper. Etienne stepped closer, tears burning his eyes. "Amélie," he murmured, taking her hand. "What happened to you?" For a moment, Amélie just looked at him, as if she couldn't believe he was really there. Then the tears began. "Oh, Eti," she sobbed. I'm so sorry for everything." Etienne gently embraced her, feeling years of worry and longing dissolve in that moment. When they finally parted, Amélie's expression turned urgent. "The children," she said, struggling to sit up. "Etienne, the children—" "They're safe," he reassured her, guiding her back onto the pillow. "They're with me. Emma, Lucas, Leah, and Louis." Relief flooded Amélie's face, quickly replaced by confusion. "How—" Etienne took a deep breath. "They showed up at my restaurant a few weeks ago. Emma had the pendant." Amélie closed her eyes, tears streaming silently. "I had no choice," she whispered. "It was the only place I knew they'd be safe." "Amélie," Etienne said gently but firmly. "What's going on? Why did you run? Why all the secrecy?" She opened her eyes again, and Etienne saw fear in them, a profound, ingrained terror. "Jean-Pierre," she began, her voice shaking. "My husband. In the beginning, he was wonderful. But then, things changed. He got involved with dangerous people, Eti. Debts, threats. When I found out I was pregnant with Emma, I tried to leave, but he—" She swallowed hard. Etienne squeezed her hand, urging her on. "He threatened me, said if I tried to leave, he'd find me, that he'd take the children. I lived in fear for years, Eti. Every child born was a new joy, but also a new terror." "And Gabriel?" Etienne asked softly. Amélie's eyes widened. "How did you—" "Emma mentioned him," he explained. "Amélie, where is Gabriel?" She looked away. "Safe, with trusted friends. I couldn't risk bringing him with me when I ran. Jean-Pierre was getting more violent, more erratic. I had to make an impossible choice." Etienne felt his heart break for his sister. Any anger he might have felt toward her for disappearing vanished, replaced by a deep compassion. "Amélie," he said gently, "you're not alone anymore. I'm here. We'll figure this out together." She looked at him, hope and fear mingling in her gaze. "The children, are they okay? Do they hate me for leaving them?" Etienne gave her a soft smile. They miss you. Emma is so strong, Amélie. She's looked after the others like a little mum, and they're all wonderful. You raised them well, despite everything. Amélie sobbed, a sound somewhere between joy and sorrow. Can I see them? Please, Etienne. I need to see them. Etienne hesitated, remembering the doctor's warning that Amélie needed rest, but also knowing how crucial a reunion would be for everyone's emotional healing. I'll bring them, he decided. But first, Amélie, we need to make sure you're safe. Jean-Pierre. He doesn't know where I am, she assured him quickly. I managed to lose him. But Etienne, he's still looking. He won't give up easily. Etienne nodded, his resolve strengthening. We'll protect you. All of you. I promise. Leaving the room to make a call, Etienne felt a swirl of relief, worry, and fierce determination. He had found Amélie at last, but the threat still loomed. Sarah, he said when she answered. I've found Amélie. I need you to bring the kids to the hospital. It's time to reunite this family. As he waited, Etienne returned to Amélie's room. She had fallen asleep, exhaustion finally winning out. He sat beside her, watching her face, familiar, yet changed by time and hardship. We're together now, sis, he murmured, using the old childhood nickname. And we'll face whatever comes, together. Outside, the morning sun was shining, promising a new day. For Etienne, Amélie, and the children, it was more than that. It was the promise of a fresh start, of secrets revealed and wounds beginning to heal. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years there was hope, a hope shining as brightly as the love that bound them together. The hospital room was steeped in tense silence. Etienne held Amélie's hand while Sarah stood by the window. After an emotional reunion with the children, who had been taken by a nurse for a snack, the adults finally had a moment to talk alone. Amélie took a shaky breath, her gaze shifting from her brother to Sarah. I think you both deserve to know the whole truth, she began, her voice unsteady but resolved. Etienne squeezed her hand gently, encouraging her. We're here for you, Amélie. No judgments. She nodded, tears shining in her eyes. It all started 7 years ago. Flashback Amélie, young and full of dreams, worked as a waitress in an upscale cafe downtown. That was where she met Jacques Mercier, a charming and seemingly successful man. He was everything I thought I wanted, Amélie explained. Smart, sophisticated, always talking about big plans for the future. Their relationship was a whirlwind. Within a few months, they were engaged. Amélie, captivated and starry-eyed, couldn't wait to start her new life. I wanted to tell you, Etienne, she said, looking at her brother in guilt. But Jacques, he convinced me we should do everything in secret, said it was more romantic that way. The wedding was intimate, just the two of them. Jacques promised a big celebration later, once his businesses took off. Only after the wedding did Jacques' true nature begin to emerge. He was a con artist, Amélie said, bitterness lacing her voice. He swindled investors with elaborate schemes. At first, I had no idea. He kept me in the dark, said it was to protect me. But the lies piled up, constant moves, fake names, empty promises of a better future. When I found out I was pregnant with Emma, it was like a reality check, Amélie continued. I realized I couldn't raise a child in a web of lies. That was when she decided to leave. She planned secretly, stashing away any money she could without Jacques noticing. I was going to come to you, Etienne, she said, tears rolling down her cheeks. But then Jacques found out about the pregnancy. His reaction was terrifying. He threatened Amélie, telling her if she tried to run, he would find her and take the baby. I was terrified, Amélie sobbed. I couldn't risk it. I couldn't let him hurt my baby. So she vanished, moved to a small town under a false name. Emma was born, and for a while, Amélie believed they were safe, but Jacques found her. He showed up one day like nothing had happened, Amélie said, her voice trembling. Said he had changed, that he wanted to be a family. For a while, Amélie believed him, or perhaps, she admitted, she just wanted to believe. They had more children, Lucas, then the twins Léa and Louis, but the peace was an illusion. Jacques continued his schemes, each one riskier and more desperate. He started drinking, becoming violent, Amélie revealed, her voice barely above a whisper. Not with me or the kids, but I saw it in his eyes. It was only a matter of time. The final straw came when Amélie discovered she was pregnant again, with Gabriel. Jacques was mixed up with truly dangerous people by then, she explained. Huge debts, threats. I knew I had to protect my children. Thus began her escape plan, months of careful preparation, always afraid of being discovered. When Gabriel was born, I knew I couldn't bring him with me right away, Amélie said, pain evident in her voice. It was too risky. I left him with trusted friends, promising to return when it was safe. The escape was chaotic. In the middle of the night, Amélie took the 4 older children and fled, leaving behind everything they knew. I knew the only truly safe place for them was with you, Eti, she said, looking at her brother. But I was afraid to involve you directly. So I left them at the door of your restaurant. Etienne, who had listened in silence, finally spoke. Why didn't you stay, Amélie? Why not come to me directly? Amélie lowered her eyes. I needed to throw Jacques off. I knew he'd come after me first. I thought if I kept moving, he wouldn't get close to the children. Sarah, who had been silent until then, moved closer to the bed. And Gabriel? Where is he now? Amélie hesitated. He's safe, but I can't say where. Not yet, it's too dangerous. Etienne stood, walking to the window, his mind spun with all these revelations. Years of worry and unanswered questions were finally being resolved. But with answers came new fears. Turning to his sister, he said firmly, Amélie, it's over. You don't have to fight alone anymore. We'll bring Gabriel home and we'll face Jacques together. Amélie looked at him, hope and fear mingling in her gaze. But Eti, it's dangerous. Jacques has connections. So do we, Sarah interrupted, determination in her voice. We have resources, Amélie, and most importantly, we have each other. At that moment, the door opened and the children ran in, their faces shining with joy at being reunited with their mother. Emma, ever perceptive, stopped short upon sensing the tension in the room. Mom, are you okay? She asked, her big eyes filled with concern. Amélie smiled, opening her arms to embrace her daughter. Yes, my love. For the first time in a long time, I think everything will be all right. Etienne watched the scene, feeling a swirl of emotions. Anger at all his sister and nephews had endured, fear for what lay ahead, but above all, a fierce determination to protect his newly reunited family. Let's go home, he announced, looking at everyone in the room. All of us. And we'll face whatever comes next, together. As the children cheered and Amélie quietly cried tears of relief, Etienne exchanged a meaningful glance with Sarah. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, there was hope. A hope built on truth, love, and the strength of a united family. Morning sunlight filtered through the hospital curtains, casting a golden glow on Amélie, who slept peacefully. Etienne, sitting by the bed, watched his sister with a mix of relief and concern. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind of emotions for everyone. A soft knock at the door announced Sarah's arrival, carrying 2 cups of coffee. How is she? Sarah asked quietly, handing a cup to Etienne. He accepted the drink gratefully. Better. The doctor said she's responding well to treatment. Sarah nodded, sitting beside him. And you? How are you handling all this? Etienne sighed, running a hand through his hair. Honestly, I'm still processing. It's like waking from a nightmare we've been trapped in for years. Sarah placed a comforting hand on his arm, a simple gesture filled with understanding. Etienne felt a surge of gratitude for her unwavering presence. I spoke to the private clinic, he said after a moment. They're ready to take Amélie as soon as the hospital authorizes the transfer. Great, Sarah replied. It'll be good for her to have more privacy and comfort, and for the kids too. The mention of the children made Etienne smile. Despite all the turmoil, they had shown incredible resilience. Almost on cue, children's voices echoed down the hallway. Moments later, Emma, Lucas, Leah, and Louis burst into the room, their faces bright with excitement to see their mother. Shh, Etienne whispered, placing a finger to his lips. Mum's still asleep. The kids nodded solemnly, tiptoeing closer to the bed. Emma, ever careful, studied her mother's face. "She looks better," the girl observed quietly. Etienne felt his heart clench at the maturity in her voice. "Yes, sweetie. She's getting stronger every day." As if sensing the children, Amélie stirred, her eyes opening slowly. For a moment she seemed disoriented, but then her gaze landed on the kids, and her face lit up with a smile. "My loves," she whispered, opening her arms. What followed was a careful yet emotional family reunion. The children nestled around Amélie, each eager to share news of the past few days. Etienne and Sarah watched, smiles on their faces. It was as though the missing pieces of a puzzle were finally coming together. Later that day, while the children were at the hospital cafe with Sarah, Etienne spoke seriously with Amélie about the next steps. "The clinic is excellent," he explained softly. "They have programs for both physical and emotional therapy. Most importantly, it's secure. No one will know you're there." Amélie nodded, though Etienne could see the hesitation in her eyes. "And the kids? They'll stay with me and Sarah," he reassured her. "We'll visit every day. And once you're stronger, we can figure out something more permanent." Amélie squeezed his hand firmly. "Thank you, Eti, for everything. I don't know what would have happened if—" Etienne gently cut her off. "Don't think about that. We're together now, that's all that matters." In the days that followed, a new routine began to take shape. Every morning, Etienne and Sarah took the children to school, a thrilling novelty for the little ones who had spent so much time hidden away. In the afternoons, they all visited Amélie at the clinic. Sarah proved invaluable during this transitional period. She helped arrange Etienne's apartment to accommodate the children, set up meal and chore schedules, and even found a child therapist to help the kids process their experiences. One evening, after tucking the children into bed, Etienne found Sarah on the balcony, gazing pensively at the city lights. "A penny for your thoughts," he said softly, joining her. Sarah smiled, though her eyes remained distant. "I was just thinking about how life can change so quickly. A few weeks ago, we were just co-workers, and now, Etienne asked, his heart beating a little faster. Sarah turned to him, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Now we're a family, or something very close to it." Etienne felt a wave of emotion. Without thinking, he reached out and gently touched Sarah's face. "I can't imagine going through this without you," he admitted. For a moment, they stood there, the air filled with unspoken possibilities. Then, almost simultaneously, they leaned in, their lips meeting in a soft, promise-filled kiss. When they broke apart, both were smiling, a little shy but filled with hope. "I guess we have a lot to talk about," Sarah said quietly. Etienne nodded, taking her hand. "We do, but right now, I'm just grateful you're here." In the days that followed, the bond between Etienne and Sarah continued to grow, strengthened by the challenges they faced together. The children, perceptive as ever, seemed to sense the change, responding with knowing smiles or, in Emma's case, barely contained excitement. Meanwhile, at the clinic, Amélie made remarkable progress. Her physical strength returned bit by bit, and therapy sessions helped her process the traumas of the past few years. During one particularly emotional visit, Amélie held both Etienne's and Sarah's hands, tears in her eyes. "What you two have done for me and the kids, there aren't enough words to thank you." Sarah smiled gently. "We're family, Amélie. That's what families do." Etienne, his heart full, added, "And we'll keep being here, all of us, no matter what the future brings." That evening, back at the apartment, Etienne reflected on how much their lives had changed. Once sterile and lonely, the space was now full of life. The children's drawings decorated the walls, toys were scattered across the floors, and the sound of laughter echoed through the halls. Sarah joined him on the sofa, handing him a glass of wine. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. Etienne smiled, taking her hand. "How lucky I am. After everything, I feel like I've finally found my place in the world." Sarah squeezed his hand in return. "I know exactly what you mean." As they cuddled, the soft sounds of sleeping children in the background, Etienne felt a peace he hadn't experienced in years. There were still challenges ahead, dealing with Jacques, ensuring Gabrielle's safety, and countless other hurdles. But in that moment, surrounded by his newly formed family's love, Etienne knew they could face anything. Healing had begun, not only for Amélie, but for them all. And with every passing day, their bonds grew stronger, weaving together a tapestry of love, trust, and hope for the future. The morning dawned bright and promising, as though the sky itself was celebrating the long-awaited moment. Etienne straightened his tie nervously while he waited in the clinic lobby. Today was the day. Amélie was finally being discharged. Sarah arrived moments later, carrying a bouquet of lavender, Amélie's favorite. Her warm smile instantly soothed Etienne's nerves. "Ready for the big day?" she asked, adjusting the lapel of his jacket. Etienne nodded, taking her hand. "More than ready. It's a new beginning for all of us." The sound of footsteps turned their attention. Amélie stood in the hallway, a small suitcase by her side. Her face, once marked by exhaustion and fear, now shone with renewed hope. "Amélie!" Etienne exclaimed, embracing his sister gently. "Welcome back." Tears of joy filled Amélie's eyes as she hugged Sarah next. "Thank you, both of you, for everything." The drive back to the apartment was filled with lively conversation and plans for the future. Etienne couldn't help noticing how different Amélie seemed, lighter, more present. Weeks of physical and emotional care had made a world of difference. Arriving at the building that housed the Liqueur restaurant, Etienne couldn't contain his smile of anticipation. "I have a surprise for you, Amélie." Instead of taking her to his old apartment, he led her to a different floor. Opening the door, he revealed a spacious, welcoming place, freshly renovated and furnished. "Etienne," Amélie gasped, her eyes roaming the cozy rooms. "This is our new home," he finished, smiling. "There's room for all of us. You, the children, me, and Sarah, if she wants." He cast a hopeful glance her way, and she blushed slightly. Before Amélie could respond, the sound of children's voices filled the air. Emma, Lucas, Leah, and Louis came rushing out of one of the bedrooms, their faces alight with happiness. "Mom!" they shouted in unison, throwing themselves into her arms. The next moments were filled with laughter, tears, and tight embraces. Etienne and Sarah looked on with hearts full, their hands intertwined discreetly. After the initial excitement settled, everyone gathered in the living room. The kids were eager to show off their new rooms and toys. "Uncle Etienne let us pick the colors," Lucas exclaimed, tugging on Amélie's hand. "And Aunt Sarah helped us decorate," Leah added, her eyes shining. Amélie cast a grateful look at Etienne and Sarah. "You thought of everything, didn't you?" Sarah smiled, sitting beside Amélie. "We wanted you and the kids to feel at home from the very start." As the children ran off to gather their drawings to show their mom, Etienne took the opportunity to discuss the next steps with Amélie. "I spoke with an excellent therapist," he explained softly. "Dr. Claire. She specializes in cases like yours and offered to do sessions here at first, if that's more comfortable for you." Amélie nodded, a flicker of apprehension crossing her face. "I think that would be good. I know I have a lot to work through." Ever observant, Sarah took Amélie's hand. "We'll be here for you at every step. You won't face anything alone anymore." Her words seemed to touch Amélie deeply. She looked around at the cozy apartment, at her children happily playing, at her brother and Sarah, her new extended family. "You know," Amélie began, her voice thick with emotion, "for so long I lived in fear. Fear of being found, fear of losing the kids, fear of the future. But now, for the first time in years, I feel hope." Etienne felt his own eyes grow damp. "That's how it should be, sis, and I promise we'll do everything we can to keep that hope alive." The rest of the day was spent celebrating. Etienne prepared a feast worthy of his Michelin-starred restaurant, featuring everyone's favorite dishes. Sarah organized games and activities, filling the apartment with laughter and cheer. That evening, after the children had finally been coaxed into bed, demanding multiple bedtime stories from their mother, Amélie, Etienne, and Sarah gathered on the balcony, enjoying the city lights. "It's strange," Amélie commented, sipping a glass of wine. I spent so long looking over my shoulder, always on the move. Now the idea of staying put, building a life here, it's both exciting and scary. Sarah, seated next to Etienne, offered a sympathetic smile. That's natural. Even good changes can be intimidating. Etienne nodded. The important thing is you're not alone anymore. We have time, Amélie. Time to heal, to grow, to rediscover who we are as a family. Amélie glanced at her brother and Sarah, a teasing smile playing on her lips. Speaking of family, is there something you two would like to tell me? Etienne and Sarah exchanged surprised looks, then laughed, their hands instinctively finding each other's. I guess we're not as subtle as we thought, Sarah admitted, blushing. Amélie grinned genuinely. I'm happy for you. Truly. Sarah, you're already part of this family in so many ways. The kids adore you, and it's obvious how much you and Etienne care for each other. The moment was interrupted by a soft call from the children's room. Mum? Amélie stood, joy lighting her eyes. Duty calls good night to you two, and thank you for everything. As Amélie left, Etienne and Sarah remained on the balcony, the city's night sounds humming in the distance. So, Etienne began, turning to Sarah, what do you think of all this? This new life we're building? Sarah smiled, leaning in to kiss him gently. I think it's exactly where we're meant to be, all of us. As the couple gazed out at the city lights, arms wrapped around each other, Etienne reflected on how much his life had changed in such a short time. Once, the restaurant had been his entire universe. Now it was just one part of something much bigger, something far more meaningful. With Amélie back, the children safe and happy, and Sarah by his side, Etienne felt a completeness he had never experienced before. The challenges they still faced, Amélie's therapy, the children's adjustment, the distant yet real threat of Jacques, seemed far less daunting when faced together. This new beginning, he realized, was more than just another chapter in his life. It was the promise of an entirely new story, written with love, courage, and the unbreakable bonds of family. The aroma of freshly baked croissants filled the air in Lecoeur's kitchen. Amélie, wearing a spotless white apron, watched attentively as Etienne demonstrated the perfect technique for folding puff pastry. See, it's all about patience and precision, Etienne explained, his skilled fingers deftly working the dough. Amélie nodded, her eyes shining with a mix of concentration and excitement. It's fascinating, Eti. I never imagined there was so much science behind a simple croissant. Etienne smiled, feeling a wave of pride. Over the past few weeks, Amélie had proven to be an enthusiastic learner, soaking up every detail of how the restaurant worked. You have a natural talent, he remarked, watching her try the technique herself. Must be in our family. A burst of children's laughter interrupted them. Both turned to see Emma and Lucas entering the kitchen, closely followed by Sarah. Mom, Uncle Etienne, Lucas called out. Can we taste the croissants? Amélie laughed, lifting her son into her arms. As soon as they cool, mon petit, I promise you'll be the first to try. Sarah approached, giving Etienne a quick kiss. The kids are excited about the picnic this afternoon, she said with a smile. Leia and Louis are already picking which toys they want to bring. The idea for a picnic in the park had been Sarah's, a way to celebrate Amélie's progress and the new balance the family was finding. While the children ran off to get ready, Etienne couldn't help noticing the happy glow on Amélie's face. It was an expression he hadn't seen in years, pure contentment and joy. You look well, sis, he said softly. Amélie smiled, taking her brother's hand. I feel well, Eti. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm exactly where I belong. The rest of the morning was a whirlwind of activity. Amélie and Etienne finished preparing croissants and other treats for the picnic, while Sarah helped the children gather their things. When they finally arrived at the park, the sun was high in the sky as though blessing the moment. The children raced straight to the playground, their laughter ringing out in the warm air. Etienne, Amélie, and Sarah found a shady spot, spreading out the picnic blanket and laying out the food. You know, Amélie began, watching the children play. A few months ago, I couldn't have imagined a day like this. It felt like an impossible dream. Sarah placed a reassuring hand on Amélie's shoulder. You're stronger than you realize. Look how far you've come. Etienne nodded. And the best part is that now, you don't have to carry the burden by yourself. We're all here together. Amelie's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She glanced from her brother to Sarah, her voice trembling. Thank you for everything, for giving me a second chance, for caring for the children, for making me believe in a future again. Their moment was interrupted by Emma, who ran over, cheeks flushed from playing. Mom, Uncle Etienne, come play with us. The adults exchanged smiling looks before getting up to join the children. What followed was an afternoon filled with games, laughter, and precious new memories. While playing hide and seek with Lucas, Etienne couldn't help reflecting on how much his life had changed. The restaurant, once his sole focus, now felt like just one piece of a much larger, more meaningful puzzle. Later that evening, back at the apartment above Le Coeur, the family gathered around the table for a relaxed dinner. The children chattered eagerly about their park adventures, and the adults listened with fond smiles. After dinner, as Amélie tucked the twins into bed, Etienne and Sarah went out onto the balcony, gazing at the city lights below. It was a perfect day, Sarah commented, resting her head on Etienne's shoulder. He wrapped an arm around her, placing a gentle kiss on her forehead. It really was, and you know what? I think there will be many more days like this to come. Sarah lifted her face, her eyes meeting his. I love you, she said softly. You and this wonderful family we've built together. Etienne felt his heart fill with emotion. I love you too, Sarah, more than I ever thought possible. Their kiss was interrupted by a soft clearing of the throat. Amélie stood at the balcony doorway, a playful smile on her lips. Sorry to interrupt, lovebirds. I just wanted to say good night. Etienne and Sarah laughed, unembarrassed. Good night, Amélie, they said in unison. Once Amélie had gone, Etienne turned to Sarah, a sudden idea taking shape. What do you think about making it official? Sarah raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Making what official? Us, Etienne replied, his heart pounding. This family, Sarah. Will you marry me? The silence that followed felt like an eternity, though only seconds passed. Then Sarah's face lit up with the brightest smile Etienne had ever seen. Yes, she whispered, tears of joy forming. 1,000 times yes. Their kisses and hugs were interrupted by clapping and cheers from the living room. Turning, they saw Amélie and the children, apparently not all asleep, watching with wide smiles. Finally, Emma exclaimed, sprinting to hug both Sarah and Etienne. The next moments were filled with spontaneous celebration, the children jumping up and down while Amélie opened a bottle of champagne she had been saving for a special occasion. As the family rejoiced, Etienne looked around, his heart brimming with love and gratitude. Le Coeur, the restaurant he had once considered his sole pride and joy, was now so much more than a business. It was the place that housed his dreams, hopes, and, above all, his family. The restaurant had become more than just a fine dining establishment. It was home to every single one of them. Say a place that had weathered storms, witnessed obstacles overcome, and now brimmed with the warmth of a united family. As the night wore on and the children finally succumbed to slumber, Etienne, Sarah, and Amélie remained awake, talking in hushed voices, reliving the happiness of the moment and imagining a bright future they would share together. The rebuilding was complete. What had once been broken was now stronger than ever. And Le Coeur, both as a restaurant and the home it had become, beat with the love and unity of a truly reunited family. Le Coeur buzzed with its usual Friday night energy. The clink of silverware and lively conversation filled the air, mingling with the enticing aroma of meticulously prepared dishes by Etienne and his team. Amélie, now a familiar presence in the restaurant, moved gracefully among the tables, her warm smile enchanting patrons. From his vantage point in the kitchen, Etienne observed her and felt a surge of pride. She had truly blossomed these past weeks, regaining not only her health but her confidence too. The bell at the front door chimed, announcing a new arrival. Amélie turned to greet the guest, but the words died on her lips. Standing in the doorway was a face she had hoped never to see again. Jacques. Time seemed to freeze. Jacques, in a sharp suit with a predatory smile, looked completely out of place in the warm, welcoming atmosphere of Liqueur. His eyes scanned the room until they locked onto Amélie's, a triumphant gleam in his gaze. "Ah, ma chérie," he said, his voice dripping with false sweetness. "It's been a while." Amélie felt her legs nearly give out, but years of surviving bolstered her resolve. "Jacques," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper, "what are you doing here?" Before he could answer, Etienne emerged from the kitchen, instantly sensing the tension. Within seconds, he was at Amélie's side, his arm protectively around her. "May I help you, sir?" Etienne asked, his tone calm but underpinned by steel. Jacques smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Ah, you must be the brother. Etienne, right? Amélie spoke of you often, back in the day." Etienne felt Amélie tremble beside him. "Perhaps we should discuss this in private," he suggested, guiding Jacques and Amélie to his office in the back. Once inside, with the door closed, Jacques' polite facade crumbled. "I've come to collect what's mine," he growled. "Money, Amélie." "You owe me." Amélie, who had been silent, finally found her voice. "I owe you nothing, Jacques. You lost any right to me or the children a long time ago." Jacques laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "The children? Oh, darling, do you really think you can keep them from me?" "I am their father, after all. A father who threatened them and put them in danger," Etienne interjected, disgust edging his voice. "You have no rights here, Jacques." Jacques turned on Etienne, malice shining in his eyes. "Don't you wonder what will happen if I go to the authorities about how Amélie ran off with the kids, the fake names, false identities? Think your precious restaurant can survive that scandal?" Amélie paled, but Etienne remained steady. "Go ahead," he said coolly. "We'll be more than happy to share your fraudulent activities, your debts to dangerous people, and how you threatened innocent children with those same authorities." Jacques' confidence faltered for an instant. "So you have no proof?" "Don't we?" Etienne arched an eyebrow. "Are you absolutely sure we're not prepared for this exact moment?" A tense silence followed, loaded with unspoken threats and old fears. Amélie was the one who finally broke it. "Enough, Jacques," she said firmly. "It's over. You have no power over me or my family anymore. Leave and don't come back." Jacques glared from Amélie to Etienne, realizing he'd lost control of the situation. The charming veneer had completely fallen away, revealing a bitter, desperate man. "This isn't over," he threatened, but his words rang hollow. Etienne opened the office door. "Yes, it is. Get out of my restaurant now or I'll call the police." For a moment, Jacques looked like he might resist, but then, with one last hateful glare, he stormed out, shoving past Sarah, who was about to enter the office. "What happened?" Sarah asked, alarmed. "Who was that man?" Amélie collapsed into a chair, the stress of the confrontation hitting her at once. "It was Jacques," she whispered. "He found us." Sarah immediately went to Amélie's side, hugging her. Etienne, meanwhile, picked up the phone. "What are you doing?" Amélie asked, a hint of panic in her voice. "Calling Marc," Etienne replied, referring to the detective who had helped them before. "We need to make sure Jacques really leaves us alone once and for all." In the hours that followed, Liqueur became a fortress of love and protection. The children, sensing the tension in the air, clung to Amélie, offering hugs and words of comfort. The restaurant staff, loyal to Etienne and now Amélie, kept quiet watch. Late that night, with the children finally asleep and the restaurant closed, Etienne, Sarah, and Amélie gathered in the kitchen, cups of hot tea in hand. "You were amazing today, Amélie," Sarah said gently. "Facing Jacques like that took incredible strength." Amélie gave a small, shaky laugh. "I didn't feel strong, I was terrified." Etienne took his sister's hand. "But you didn't back down. You refused to let him intimidate you. That, sis, is true courage." Amélie looked from her brother to Sarah, gratitude washing over her. "I couldn't have done it without you, without this family we've built." A peaceful silence followed, filled with mutual understanding and unconditional love. Liqueur, once merely a restaurant, was now truly a home, an oasis against life's storms. As the night wore on, the three stayed there together. The future was still uncertain, but one thing was clear: They could face anything together. The past had been confronted, and though the scars remained, the family was stronger than ever, ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. Autumn sunlight bathed Liqueur's garden in a golden glow, the leaves swaying gently in the breeze. Elegantly set tables curved into a semicircle, each adorned with lavender arrangements, Amélie's special touch. In the center, standing under an arch woven with wildflowers, Etienne waited, his heart pounding with emotion. Beside him, Lucas, dressed in a tiny suit, held the rings with pride. The soft murmurs of their small gathering of family and close friends ceased as the music began. Everyone turned to see Sarah walking down the makeshift aisle, radiant in a simple yet elegant dress. Emma and Leah walked just ahead of her, scattering flower petals, their smiles as bright as the sun. Amélie, standing next to Etienne as his best woman, felt tears of joy welling up. Seeing her brother, the man who had sacrificed so much for her and her children, finally finding his own happiness, was more than she had ever hoped for. When Sarah reached the altar, Etienne took her hands, his eyes overflowing with love. "You look stunning," he whispered. The ceremony was simple and deeply moving. Vows were exchanged. Promises of love and loyalty were made. Vows that extended not only between Etienne and Sarah, but to the entire family they had built together. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the garden erupted in applause and cheers. Louis, the younger twin, ran to hug Sarah's legs, exclaiming, "Mom!" a title she had earned not by birth, but by boundless love. The reception that followed was a celebration of joy and unity. Liqueur, known for high-end cuisine, had transformed into the warmest, most welcoming party space, with hearty, comforting dishes chosen by everyone. As evening began to fall, Etienne found a moment of calm. Standing on the restaurant's balcony, he gazed down at the scene, Sarah dancing with the children, Amélie chatting happily with old friends, now reunited. Etienne's heart overflowed with a feeling he could barely contain. "A penny for your thoughts, brother," came Amélie's gentle voice. She joined him on the balcony, handing him a glass of champagne. Etienne smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "I was thinking about how life can change in a year. Do you remember where we were 365 days ago?" Amélie nodded, her expression softening at the memory. "How could I forget? I was in the hospital, exhausted and terrified. And you were my savior." "No, sis," Etienne corrected quietly. "We saved each other. You and the kids gave me a purpose I didn't even know was missing." They fell silent, watching the celebration below. Liqueur, once famous only for its culinary prowess, was now known throughout the city for its warmth and sense of family. The weekly family nights, introduced by Etienne after the children arrived, had become legendary. "You know," Amélie said softly, "I never really thanked you properly. For everything." Etienne turned to her, seeing not just his sister, but the strong woman she had become. Therapy, the family's love, and her own unstoppable spirit had worked wonders. Amélie now shone with a confidence and serenity that was inspiring. "There's no need for thanks between family," he replied. "Besides, you gave me the greatest gift of all, a family." Their moment was interrupted by Emma, who rushed in. "Uncle Etienne, Aunt Sarah needs you. It's time for the cake." Laughing, Etienne scooped Emma into his arms. "Well, we can't keep the bride waiting, can we?" Heading back to join the party, Etienne was quickly enveloped by the warmth and love of his family. Sarah greeted him with a kiss, their hands intertwining effortlessly as they cut the cake, surrounded by beaming faces. Etienne's gaze drifted to the wall where Amélie's pendant was now framed. Next to it, a photo of the entire family: Etienne, Sarah, Amélie, the children, and finally, little Gabriel, who had been reunited with them. Evening stretched into night, and the celebration slowly wound down. The children, exhausted but elated, dozed off on various sofas and chairs. The final guests offered their goodbyes, leaving only the immediate family behind. Seated around one of the tables, Etienne, Sarah, Amélie, and the older kids, Emma and Lucas, shared the last bites of cake. "You know," Emma said thoughtfully, "I remember the night we arrived here. I was so scared, but now, it's like we've always belonged." Amélie hugged her daughter, pressing a kiss to her hair. "You're right, mon cœur. This is our home. It always will be." Etienne glanced around the table, his heart swelling. "When I first opened this restaurant," he began, his voice gentle but sure, "I thought it was my greatest dream fulfilled. But now I see Le Coeur was never just about food or Michelin stars. It was always about this: family, love, and second chances." Sarah took his hand, tears shining in her eyes. "And about starting new chapters," she added quietly, resting her free hand meaningfully on her abdomen. The implication was clear. Amélie was the first to react, a joyful cry escaping her lips. "Sarah, you're—" Sarah nodded, her smile radiant. "We just found out. We wanted to wait for the perfect moment to tell everyone." Cheers erupted around the table. Hugs were exchanged, tears of joy shed. Even a sleepy Lucas perked up at the thought of a new sibling on the way. As the excitement died down, Etienne found his gaze returning to the framed pendant. What had once been a symbol of loss and separation had become a testament to love, perseverance, and the unbreakable bonds of family. "A toast," he said, raising his glass. The others did the same, even the children with their cups of juice, to family, to love, and to the priceless treasure we've found in one another. "To family," they echoed, voices blending in a chorus of affection and gratitude. As the night drew to a close and the children were carried off to bed, the remnants of the celebration tidied away. Etienne lingered in the main room of the restaurant. His gaze passed over the empty tables, each bearing memories of shared laughter, stories exchanged, and hearts healed. Le Coeur, he realized, had become far more than a restaurant. It was home, a sanctuary, a testament to the transformative power of love and family. And as tomorrow stretched out before them, inevitably bringing new challenges and new joys, Etienne knew they would face it together, bound by the strongest tie of all, the unconditional love of a truly united family.